Humans living along the banks of the Amazon River in South America grew and consumed cassava hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus first voyaged there. Today, more than 80 countries throughout the tropics grow cassava, and it is a primary component of the diet of more than 800 million people around the world. People prepare and eat cassava in various ways in different parts of the world, with baking and boiling being the most common methods. In some places, people ferment cassava before using it. Welcome to Suya e-learning for food security, climate change, school feeding program, nutrition education for all. When you have bad governance and poor accountability from your local government leaders, then you are doomed to live under control of cartels and fools. We hope you subscribe to our channel YouTube at Suya Mombasa and share this links with your friends or family. Wisdom is a state of the human mind characterized by profound understanding and deep insight. It is often, but not necessarily, accompanied by higher education or proper training. Seeker of truth and knowledge are self-directed learner. The best knowledge seekers are working for best interest of nation. Why aren't farmers billionaires? Oranges, beans, cow, chicken, rice or any other farm produce won't make a farmer that rich. The money lies in the whole value chain. The farmer only operates in the beginning of the chain. For a farmer to get that wealthy, another section of the chain has to be taken into consideration. For instance, the farmer could add processing to the chain. Most farmers just sell the produce to those that process, from where it is then sent to the wholesalers and then to the consumers. If farmer starts processing his goods, more money comes in. He will be richer if he goes further to own stores that sell those produce or restaurant chain. It's all about the value chain. The more the value chain the farmer takes control of, the more revenue raked in, and he can then become a billionaire. Agricultural extension officers communicate with farmers, supporting decision-making by providing information on sustainable farming practices. Agricultural extension officers propagate new, more effective farming methods based on the latest research. In all toil there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty.
Transform 3 million poor farmers from food deficit to surplus producers through input finance and intensive agricultural extension support, with a target to generate minimum productivity target of 50,000 per acre. Knowledge is a garden. If it isn't cultivated, you can't harvest it. About 5,000 stem cuttings can be planted in 1 acre in a spacing of 1 meter by 0.80 meters. 1 tree equals 10 kilograms roots. Total produce 50,000 kilograms. Selling at 20 sh per kilogram. Total sale of 1 million. Total sale from stems. Mini stems 350,000. Total sale of leaves for fodder, eating, 250,000. Pumpkins and beans. Companion crop. Value additions. 200,000.
Most members of Hustler Nation are young and energetic, but lack avenues to make real money. The wider picture is one of despair, as many obstacles have been placed in the path of hustlers by dynasties to keep them blind to real money-making opportunities. It is our vision that in 2 years, the farming class will have been fully nationalized and working hand in hand with the government by receiving directives on what to plant, how to plant it. Scientists study teosinte maize hybrids and their offspring through the process of genetic archaeology. This process helps geneticists understand what is happening at the DNA level to make teosinte and maize so different. By combining clues from genetics and the archaeological record, scientists have pieced together much of the story of maize evolution. Maize reached highland Ecuador at least 8,000 years ago. It reached lower Central America by 7,600 years ago, and the valleys of the Colombian Andes between 7,000 and 6,000 years ago. The earliest maize plants grew a single, small ear per plant. What is the origin of maize? For the last few decades, the consensus has been that maize, maize, was domesticated once from a single wild grass, called teosinte, in the lowlands of southwest Mexico about 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. Who introduced maize to Africa? It is believed maize was first brought to West Africa by the Portuguese, although the exact date of introduction is not known due to the limited historical record. Miracle, 1966. Cassava, Manihot esculenta, also known as manioc, tapioca, yuca, and mandioca, is a domesticated species of tuber. A root crop originally domesticated perhaps as long ago as 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, in southern Brazil and eastern Bolivia along the southwestern border of the Amazon basin. Is cassava toxic? Avoid eating cassava roots and leaves raw, because it contains naturally occurring forms of cyanide, which are toxic to ingest. Soaking and cooking cassava makes these compounds harmless. Eating raw or incorrectly prepared cassava can lead to severe side effects. Importance of quality seed, the value of seed certification, and the necessity for farmers to purchase certified seed to avoid yield losses and the associated threats to food insecurity. National Cassava Development Strategy, NCDS, 2020 to 2030 Tanzania Action Report, 96 pages. Furthermore, there are alternatives to GM that ensure longer-term and sustained resistance to CBSD, such as continuous in situ breeding of CBSD-resistant varieties that are in the hands of farmers, such as the Kiroba cassava in neighboring Tanzania. Root Crops Coordinator announces that new cassava varieties have been released in Tanzania, for the coastal zone and 5 for the lake zone. They are all resistant to cassava brown streak disease and high yield. Fantastic news for 2022. Cassava is one of the leading food and feed plants of the world. It ranks 4th among staple crops, with a global production of about 160 million tons per year. Most of this is grown in 3 regions: West Africa and the adjoining Congo Basin, tropical South America, and South and Southeast Asia. Cassava is one of the most efficient producers of carbohydrates and energy among all food crops. Its root constitutes one of the world's largest stock crops for starch. What other products are made of cassava? Cassava is the basis of a multitude of products, including food, flour, animal feed, alcohol, starches for sizing paper and textiles, sweeteners, prepared foods, and biodegradable products. What are 10 things made from cassava? Cassava dried chips. Cassava chips are most commonly available product of cassava. Cassava flour. Cassava chips are used for the preparation of cassava flour, which is consumed in the same manner as rice flour. Pre-gelatinized cassava starch, yuca rava and yuca porridge. Cassava papad. Sago wafers. Fried chips, etc. Cassava is the third most important staple food crop in Tanzania after maize and rice. About 1.9 million stakeholders are involved in cassava production and/or other businesses along the entire cassava value chain. National Cassava Development Strategy provides strategic interventions that focus on increasing current production by threefold in line with product quality improvement that responds to the growing demand. Cassava commercialization involves transformation of subsistence-oriented farming system towards market patterns of production for profit maximization. Conduct surveillance annually, develop and disseminate phytosanitary guidelines and training manual by 2025. All border posts retooled with improved equipment by 2030. Train 200 plant health services inspectors by 2030. Train 100 extension officers in cassava growing districts for decentralized surveillance network by 2030. Train 1,000 cassava stakeholders on phytosanitary compliance by 2030. Prepare and maintain pest risk analyses for external cassava pest and disease threats by 2030. Develop 400,000 hectares for cassava enterprise investments by 2030. Market system for cassava products, fresh roots, chips, flour and starch, enhanced by 2030. 5 small-scale and 1 large-scale cassava collection centers established per district in major cassava growing areas by 2030. 200 farmers and processor groups transformed into agricultural marketing cooperatives, AMCOs, by 2030, cassava diversified into new products, glucose syrup, modified starch, blending cereal with HQCF and ethanol, for new markets by 2030, at least 5 cassava product specifications to standards adhered to by 2030, and a total of 500,000 cassava stakeholders trained on entrepreneurship and marketing skills by 2030. Agriculture and the Kenyan economy. The agricultural sector is the backbone of the national economy, contributing directly 25% of gross domestic product, GDP, 60% of export earnings, and 75% of the country's industrial raw materials. Moreover, through links with manufacturing, distribution and service-related sectors, agriculture indirectly contributes a further 27% of the country's GDP. Indeed, the GDP growth originating from agriculture is at least twice as effective in reducing poverty as non-agricultural GDP. Increase availability of quality cassava planting materials from 40.96 million cuttings in 2018 to 3.5 billion cuttings by 2030. Ensure at least 30% of the area under cassava production are planted with planting materials of improved varieties by 2030. Increase area of registered cassava planting material multiplication farms from 398.85 hectares 2020 to 15,000 hectares by 2030. Develop and disseminate cassava fertilizer rates and facilitate establishment of at least 5 large-scale input suppliers by 2030. Train and deploy at least 100 authorized seed inspectors and 20 cassava input suppliers by 2030. At least 50% of early generation cassava seed farms equipped with modern irrigation facilities by 2030. Facilitate 100 processing groups with improved peeling, drying, and storage technologies by 2030. 5 manufacturers of processing equipment facilitated by 2030. 50 primary agro-processing centers, ACP, and product aggregators at production catchments established and equipped with 200 mobile processing units by 2030. 15 medium and 5 large-scale high-value cassava products processing plants established and operational under PPP by 2030. Upscaling 150 cassava processing plants by 2023. Good manufacturing practices manual developed and adopted by 2023. Thanks for watching. If you like our content or would like to make any comment or suggestions for improvement, please do so in the comment section. Otherwise, hit the subscribe button and make sure to never miss our weekly educational podcast. Cassava leaves have the same yield in terms of fresh material as the roots, so yearly global leaf production can be estimated at close to 300 million tons. In contrast, the estimated volume of consumed leaves is less than 1 million tons per annum. Cassava leaves are a good source of protein, vitamins B12, B2, beta-carotene, niacin. This plant contains starch that is extremely valuable for the digestive system. Cassava root is very helpful in fighting diarrhea, bruises, inflammation and ulcers. Root production can be seriously affected by cutting the foliage at 3 months. However, cutting at 5 months only reduced yield slightly because the roots have already formed. Excellent dry foliage and protein production can be obtained by successive cuttings at 6, 9, 12, 14, and 17 months. Bush height at least 120 centimeters. 30 to 60 tons per acre. The leaves can be harvested 50 to 70 days after planting. Goals of the CCM Manifesto for the year 2020 to 2025. This manifesto aims to build on the gains made by the implementation of the 2015 CCM Election Manifesto. Similarly, the content of this manifesto is in line with the policy vision of Chama Cha Mapinduzi of 2020 to 2030, the National Development Vision 2025 and the Zanzibar Development Vision 2020 to 2050. In addition, this manifesto addresses the opportunities and challenges posed by the various political, economic, social and technological changes that occur in the country and the world, as well as the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. To protect and strengthen the principles of dignity, equality, justice and good governance in order to maintain peace, unity and solidarity of our nation. Cooking, boiling of cassava leaves in water with added palm oil resulted in a decrease in cyanogen levels of 96, greater than 99%, in Goody et al., 2003. The best processing method for the use of cassava vegetable leaves as human food is pounding the leaves and washing in water 2 times and cooking in water. Soaking followed by boiling is better than soaking, or boiling alone can remove cyanide. Seed technology development in Kenya is a mandate of CalRO. Certification of seed is carried out by KEFIS, while multiplication is the mandate of ADC and other registered seed merchants. The seed systems are well developed for cereals, pulses, fruits and vegetables. However, the roots and tuber crop seed systems are poorly developed due to their vegetative nature of propagation. CalRO develops high-quality basic seed varieties for roots and tuber crops which are released occasionally, but these technologies remain on the shelves due to poor or lack of funding by the government despite demand from producers. Preservation technology. As soon as food is harvested or processed into a product, it starts to change. This is caused by 2 main processes. Autolysis, self-destruction, caused by enzymes present in the food. Microbial spoilage, caused by the growth of bacteria, yeasts and molds. One reason given for the high intake of cassava cyanide that results in konzo epidemics is increased cyanogenic glucoside levels in fresh cassava roots and in cassava products. Researchers mainly attribute the increase in cyanogenic glucoside levels to water stress from prolonged droughts that coincide with most epidemics of konzo and to the planting of bitter cassava varieties, which are preferred by many farmers. A glucoside is a glycoside that is derived from glucose. Glucosides are common in plants, but rare in animals. Glucose is produced when a glucoside is hydrolyzed by purely chemical means or decomposed by fermentation or enzymes. Dry season, interseasonal dry spells, water stress, is similarly known to result in increased cyanogenic glucoside levels in cassava. Distribution curves of flour total cyanide show that the percentage of samples exceeding 100 ppm total cyanide increased from 6% in an average year to 43 to 65% in a low rainfall year, when cases of konzo also occurred. What to do? Plant early in the rainy season to allow the cassava plants a good growth before the dry season. Strong plants are more likely to withstand pest attacks. 2. Use soil amendments and mulch to avoid moisture stress in sandy or poor soils. Mealybug numbers are higher on cassava grown on poor, sandy soils, and may cause damage in spite of the presence of natural enemies. 3. Avoid using infested plant material. Before planting, cutting can be treated with hot water by immersing them in heated water, mixing equal volumes of boiling and cold water for 5 to 10 minutes just before planting to kill all insects, mites, and to avoid transfer into the newly planted field. Chipping cassava roots and sun drying. This method, an alternative to grating, dewatery, and granulation, is used to make flour from a low cyanide cassava variety. Chip cassava roots into small and thin chips immediately after washing. Collect the chips in a clean containers for drying. Any variety whose level of bitterness or cyanogen content is unknown should be grated. Sun drying alone can eliminate almost 90% of the initial cyanide content. Morgan and Mingan 2016. Tropical ataxic neuropathy, TAN, describes several neurological symptoms affecting the mouth, eyesight, hearing, or gait of mostly older males and females. TAN is attributed to cyanide exposure from the chronic consumption of foods derived from cassava, Sands, 2004. Factors influencing risk: food processing procedures such as soaking, fermentation, or drying will reduce the levels of hydrogen cyanide before consumption through the action of plant enzymes and subsequent leaching. Processes such as grating, soaking, fermentation, and storage will allow time for conversion of cyanogenic glycosides to cyanide, while exposure to air or water will allow the cyanide to dissipate out of the food matrix. Soaking of cassava root resulted in a decrease in total cyanogen content of 13 to 52% after 24 hours, 73 to 75% after 48 hours, and 90% after 72 hours. Agba, Egg, and Leighton-Bohm, 2006, Kenderim et al., 1995. Grating cassava roots. Wash the grater thoroughly before and after grating. Grate the cassava roots immediately after washing to maintain the white color. Collect the grated cassava in clean containers such as basins. Pack the mash into clean polypropylene sacks with a fine mesh for dewatering. Tie the sacks. The grating area should be well drained. Never allow the sack containing the cassava mash to touch dirty surfaces such as floors.